starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to be talking with Mitch Brown of Zetadocs about going paperless. I know this is a huge issue for a lot of businesses, and we want to get started right away. Just a quick matter of housekeeping before we do get started. First, we do record this and all of our webinars. So if you want to watch this again or have somebody in your organization watch it, just check our website. By the end of the day, it'll be there. Our website, of course, is Innovia.com. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into that question box. What we'll do is, as questions come in, I'll read them out to Mitch, and he'll answer them there in real time. So feel free to type in any questions whenever you have them. And Mitch, without any further ado, I will hand it right over to you.
All right, thank you, Abby. I want to thank everyone for attending today's session on going paperless with Zetadocs for Dynamics NAV. As Abby mentioned, my name is Mitch Brown, and I'm the sales director here at Equisys. Just to give you an idea as to what we're going to be covering today, I've put together an agenda. I'll start off giving you a little bit of introduction to Equisys as a company. And from there, we'll move on to discussing some of the challenges that we hear from organizations that they face with the management of paper information. From there, we'll move on to how Zetadocs can help, go through an overview of our delivery and capture solutions. I'm also going to touch on the newest member to the Equisys line of products, and that's an expense management solution, before finishing up with summary items and next steps. So just to give you a little bit of background, as I mentioned, I work for Equisys Inc., a software company that has been developing document management, expense approval, and delivery solutions for 30 years. We have a special focus within our organization on developing solutions that interface very closely with Dynamics NAV. We make sure that all of our solutions are certified for Dynamics NAV, and we currently have over 1,000 implementations using the advanced versions of our products, which we'll be highlighting today. But we also have close to 10,000 customers that are using our light version of the product, which is Zetadocs Express, that you may be familiar with. So to kick things off, I want everyone to take a moment to think of the following question. Is paper within your organization on top of your finance team, or is your finance team on top of paper? When organizations initially start researching a document management solution, it's often because they're facing challenges like the picture in the bottom left corner of your screen. Documentation such as customer POs, vendor invoices, design or quality assurance certificates need to be stored. The process of filing and retrieving these documents is slow and laborious. It can lead to hours and hours spent in front of a paper file cabinet, individually filing each piece of information with the hopes that someone can retrieve it at a later date. The picture in the bottom of the screen also illustrates another issue that's quite common for organizations. That is that they're running out of space to store this information. Oftentimes, companies are faced with decisions to either rent additional storage space or utilize valuable office space to house paper file cabinets. In fact, we've worked with organizations that estimate that they spend over $30,000 a year just in the physical space required to store their paper files. Let's take a look at some of the challenges organizations face with a paper-based system in more detail. The typical purchase order process, for example, involves a number of communications between an organization and their supplier, possibly starting with an RFQ that eventually will lead to a payment. Many of these communications involve one or more documents to be exchanged, for example, contracts, W-9s, packing slips, proof of receipts, just to name a few. All of these communications need to be stored in a way that they can be retrieved at a later date to show that the purchase of goods or services has been received so that payment can be authorized. Now, if you shift the arrow slightly to the right, you can see how many of these documents will also need to be captured on the sales side to ensure prompt payment from your customers. So let's take a look at an example of a paper-based transaction, specifically in this case, purchase to pay, but as I mentioned, a lot of these documents would also apply on the sales side as well. Request for some goods or services is received by the purchasing team, who then will contact a vendor or vendors in order to receive a proposal. Once the vendor proposals are received, a copy of the proposals are typically filed in one or possibly more file cabinets. Once approved, a purchase order will then be sent out to the vendor, which once again will need to be filed alongside the proposal. The vendor may send an order confirmation notice, which means another trip to the file cabinet. Eventually, your order will ship and be received within the warehouse. The packing slip and vendor invoice documentation will need to be stored along with the other relevant information that has been received. Now, your organization may not go through all these steps, but it's easy to see how a paper-based system is costly. It requires storage space and also the equipment to maintain, because with all of these documents, they're going to need to be printed out so they can be stored in the paper file cabinet. A paper-based system is also very time-consuming. Filing and retrieving paper documents is slow and requires one or possibly more trips to a file cabinet in order to retrieve the information that an individual needs. Delays in accessing this information can lead to customer and vendor service issues, such as poor response time. Because employees don't have access to the files, they're having to either put vendors or customers on hold, or worse, possibly calling them back. Also, not having access to the right information can lead to delays in the approval process, possibly causing an organization to lose out on any potential early payment discounts. Finally, a paper-based system is unsecure. Documents can often get misfiled or lost completely, and paper-based systems are also prone to complete loss of information in the event of a fire or flood. So how does Zetadocs change this process? Zetadocs for NAV can streamline the purchase process, or I should say, so let's take a look at the process we just reviewed and how Zetadocs can be deployed to streamline the entire process. The request for a purchase is received by the finance team. That information is sent to a vendor who will then approve a quote. That will then be entered into NAV as a purchase order. The relevant quote can easily be stored against the PO. A purchase order will then be sent to the winning vendor. This email can automatically be archived electronically against the PO. Later, the order confirmation, packing slip, and invoice all arrive from a supplier, and all of these documents can be easily stored electronically against the relevant transaction within NAV and accessible from a central archive. Throughout this entire process, if there's ever a question regarding a transaction, all the customer service team or anyone that has access to NAV will need to do is pull up the relevant transaction, and they'll have access to all of that supporting information directly from within NAV without the need to search through or find paper copies of information. Now, we've talked a lot about purchasing and sales. Here are some typical scenarios where we see a document management solution like Zetadocs deployed. Probably the most common ways we've seen the solution deployed is to streamline the process of sending out reminder letters, statements, or invoices, to be able to batch deliver those documents or have them go out automatically at a schedule time each night, and making sure that the relevant information is attached that your customers, for example, are going to need in order to issue payment. We've also seen it used quite often with collections management, proof of delivery tracking, expense management, and supplier invoice approval. Now, before I go into my demonstration system, I did want to review the Zetadocs family of business process add-ons. Now, as I mentioned before, we do have a light version of our software called Zetadocs Express that's designed for companies that have light document management needs. It provides users with the ability to archive information using drag and drop technology or sending reports out one at a time. It's designed for 1 to 4 users with unlimited view capability, so you can have 1 to 4 contributing users, and then the rest of the office would be able to access the information that's been attached to the relevant record within NAV. Above Express, we do have advanced versions for delivery and capture, and we'll be reviewing some of those in just a moment. We have a web-based purchase approval solution. So if you've got purchase orders or purchase invoices that need to be routed through an approval process and your approvers don't have access to NAV, we've got a solution for that. And we've also got a cloud-based expense management solution that I'm going to be touching on in just a few moments. So with that, let me actually get out of the PowerPoint, and I'm going to hop into our NAV 2017 system. Now, for today's demonstration, I am showing Zetadocs on NAV version 17, but just so you're aware, the current version of Zetadocs goes back and supports all the way, or I should say supports all the way back to an NAV 5.0 system, as long as you have 2009 executables. So 5.0 with 2009 executables and newer versions of NAV are supported by the latest version of Zetadocs. Now, I'm on a sales order, as you can see within the system, and one of the most common ways that we see Zetadocs deployed is by organizations that want to capture incoming information, whether it be a packing slip from a vendor or a purchase order from a customer, maybe specifications that need to be attached to an item card. Zetadocs provides a variety of ways of archiving that information, the most simple of which is a drag and drop feature. So as you can see here, I've got an email that was received from April requesting some goods. We've got an attached PO, and I want to store this information. Now, with Zetadocs, you can archive that simply by taking the email and dragging and dropping it onto the sales order. When a user drags and drops the email, what's happening behind the scenes is we're actually archiving a copy of that email to, in our case, we're using SharePoint Online, but we also do support SharePoint On-Premise, as well as a network folder archive option as well. When a user drags and drops it, you can see now that email is going to be stored so that anyone that has access to the NAV system will be able to retrieve that. So if there's a question regarding, a quantity discrepancy, all a user would need to do is pull up the relevant sales order, and they'll be able to access the supporting information to be able to open the email. And when we dragged and dropped the file, we also got a dragged and dropped a copy of the PO as well. Now, this is a secure copy, so if a user deletes it from their inbox, it's not going to affect the version that's been stored to the central archive. And also, any information that's attached, in this case, to the sales order, will follow the transaction all the way through the posted sales invoice. We also, with our solution, it can be further customized to have this information flow through to any journal or ledger entries as well. Now, with this sales order, we've attached the PO from the customer. Typically, the next step in the process may be sending out an order confirmation. And Zetadocs can streamline that process. As you see in the upper ribbon, we've got a send confirmation. All a user will need to do is simply click on the send order confirmation, and the system is actually going to look at the customer card to determine how we want to deliver this report. So you can go into the customer card and specify rules based on your various customers. You can even specify rules based on the report type, so that order confirmations will go to one individual within an organization and statements will go to another. So I'm going to go ahead and send out this order confirmation. Now, it'll take a few moments for that to send out. Now, a copy of that will automatically be stored to the document archive that you see on the right-hand side, but I actually want to go into NAV, and there you can see the order confirmation just came in. And when we send out the order confirmation, we personalize the email message that's being sent out. And once again, this is a message that can be customized to pull information over from NAV. We've attached a PDF copy of the report from NAV and also automatically attached terms and conditions of sale. So the process of sending out your order confirmations can be one that is consistent. That's one of the great benefits to Zetadocs, is ensuring that when you're sending out communications to customers or vendors, there is a consistent look and feel. So there we can see that the email that was sent out. I'm going to go ahead and force a refresh of the queue, and now you can see that not only do we have the email that I dragged and dropped, but we've also got the sales order confirmation that was sent to the customer. And this is very important because you actually are getting all communications, not just the ones that have been archived using drag and drop or documents that have been scanned into the system, but also the ones that are being sent out to customers or vendors as well. Now, I highlighted how Zetadocs can streamline the capturing of supporting information, or one of the ways we support capture, and the way to streamline the delivery of an order confirmation. One of the key ways the solution has been used, though, is to streamline the batch processing of documents that are being captured or delivered. So for today, I figured I'd go through one of the most common ways we see it deployed on the delivery side, which is being able to send out not one, but hundreds or thousands of invoices. Now, with the Plus editions of our solution, you can schedule a job where this will happen, throughout the day or at a certain time each night based on certain criteria. So if you wanted to send out copies of, let's say, back-ordered items, so you want to send out a notification to customers for back-ordered items and have another notification go out in the event that something's been on back order for more than 60 days, those are processes that can be set up with Zetadocs using our server-only deployment methodology, which is available on NAV 2015 and newer systems. But to send out a batch of invoices, rather than having the automated process kick off, I'm going to show you how easy it would to do if you wanted to manually do the process as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click the send button again to send out our batch of invoices. And I'm going to specify a numeric range. Typically, this is done based on the posting date. And we're going to go ahead and send these invoices out. Whoops, looks like, let me go back and do that again because I didn't select the right filter. There we go. So now you can see the list of invoices that we have going out. Now with the Zetadocs, you do have the ability of setting the delivery method to be email, hard copy, print. So in the event that you have customers that still want to, for customers that still want to receive a hard copy, the system does offer that capability. And we also have the ability, if you have multiple invoices going to a single, in this case, customer, I can consolidate them into a single email rather than having individual emails go out. So I'm going to go ahead and send these. And we'll actually go into my email account, and I did actually send out a copy of some invoices earlier, just so you could see what it looks like when you're sending multiple invoices in one email. Here, once again, we've got a personalized message. In this case, we're sending it to Terry, Maine. We've got 3 invoices that have been attached and the terms and conditions. This was probably one of the #1 requests that we had to improve the solution with the last version of our software, was being able to consolidate multiple invoices into a single email. Now, with the delivery capability, we also can enhance it for the sending of reminder letters. A lot of customers that we've been speaking with have started using our solution to streamline the sending of statements or reminder letters. For today's session, I did want to highlight one of the neat features that we can offer when delivering reminder letters out is based on the reminder level within NAV, we can specify a template. So if someone's at a reminder level 1, you can see the terminology is very friendly, just saying your account is past due, please find the attached reminder with supporting invoices. However, if someone has gone a little further along in the collections process, they're at a reminder level 2, we can have much stronger verbiage included in the template that gets sent out, letting a user know immediately that this is a final reminder. Also, with the attachment that we send out, oftentimes we've heard that when you send a statement or reminder, the first question that a customer comes back with is a request for the associated invoices. With Zetadocs Delivery Plus, you can see we have a reminder letter, and we've overlaid stationery to indicate this is the final reminder. But we've also automatically attached copies of the previously sent invoices. So when sending out your statements or reminders, you can make sure that customers have all the information that they need pertaining so that they can approve payment. Now, for today, I wanted to focus on the delivery side. We do have several areas which we can streamline the capture in addition to the drag and drop feature I showed. We can utilize barcodes to scan proof of delivery documents or vendor invoices into the system so that they can automatically be linked. In fact, we've worked with a number of organizations that estimate that they save an hour each day by being able to streamline the scanning of those files. If that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to your Innovia account manager, and I'd be happy to set up a one-on-one demonstration at a later time. So now that we've seen the demonstration, I wanted to kind of review a couple things based on information that we've heard, some tips for things to consider when looking at a document management solution. One thing is file structure. Juggling financial documents can quickly become problematic for any organization. This is especially true for a growing business. The larger an organization becomes, the more likely they will see an increase in the documents they need to organize. The ability to find the specific documents and files can become increasingly difficult as document volumes increase, as we've previously discussed in this session. It's essential for organizations to deploy a document management solution that interfaces with NAV so their employees can quickly access or quickly search through all the stored content to find the information they need. This can ideally be done directly from within NAV, as I just showed, where all you need to do is pull up the relevant, let's say, posted sales invoice, and you have all the supporting information that goes back to the sales quote that was initially issued. A proper document management solution will also help users actually search the archived information. This will come in handy on a regular basis and save an organization a great deal of time in the long run. For example, there may be times when users need to access information that relates to more than one transaction. For ability to see all the invoice information for a particular vendor during a certain time frame. You want to make sure that when deploying a document management solution, it's archiving the information and tagging it with fields so that that information can easily be retrieved at a later time. And this can come in extremely handy during an audit, for example. Also, you want to make sure that the solution is easy to use. The system should be simple for employees to use. If it's too difficult, they won't start using the solution and it will be less effective. We've all had probably have dealt with projects where they never fully reached, were fully implemented because of ease of use issues. So you want to make sure that the system is something that employees can easily work with. To go along with that, more and more we're seeing where our employees are accessing information remotely. They're working from home or while on the road. So you want to make sure that the files that are being stored can be accessed from anywhere. One thing I haven't mentioned is with Zetadocs, I've shown it using the Windows client today, but all the features that you saw today are also available on the web client, the phone client, or tablet client. So I've had instances where I've been able to pull up information from our NAV system using an iPad. From an iPad, you can also send out a batch of invoices, as I've shown today. Here's some tips also for a successful implementation of a document management solution. Number one, you want to choose the right partner. Now, if you're on this call, you've already done that. Innovia is a great partner. They have a lot of experience deploying our solutions. So the number one thing you want to do is make sure that you choose the right partner. You also want to plan your implementation. A properly planned system minimizes the risk of disruption. When putting your plan in place, take a step back and make sure the planning process includes all the people along the chain. This ensures all workflows will be properly mapped out and the process will be implemented correctly the first time. You also want to communicate common goals and expectations. When you have all of your stakeholders on the same page, it makes for a smooth implementation. Make sure everyone is prepared for a slight level of disruption and you're able to stay focused on the overall outcome. You also want to make sure that you're taking a view as to the document management requirements for the whole organization. But then once you have that mapped out, start with one department. Instead of trying to roll out everything at once, start the process for one department, focusing on that process so that it can easily be rolled out and then all the lessons learned can be taken and applied to the next department. So if you want to start off with AP, you can focus, roll Zetadocs out in that area. Once that's completed, then move on to AR. We found that that's typically leads to the most successful implementations. And lastly, test, and test again. We always recommend testing Zetadocs within your test database before going live. Testing sometimes can be glossed over, but it's a great way to avoid any surprises during the go live that could cause a business disruption. So we always recommend going through and test, and this is an area where getting all of the stakeholders to go in and test the system in a demo environment will ensure a successful implementation when going to live. Now, as I mentioned, we've focused on sales and purchasing for a lot of today's session. I like to use this slide as a way to highlight some of the other areas that document management can streamline the process for an organization. Really, wherever there's a paper-based system or a system where you're manually filing documents to, let's say, a network folder, those are areas that Zetadocs would be able to streamline by giving users the ability to attach supporting documentation to an item card or journal entry, for example. Now, I do want to highlight again that we, at Equisys, we do have a light version of our software called Zetadocs Express. It's a great solution for organizations to test the waters with a document management solution at minimal risk. There's no charge for 1 to 4 contributing users. And with the Express version of our software, it does have an unlimited view license that comes with it. It's compatible with NAV 2009, or I should say NAV 2009 and newer systems, and does support the tablet, web, and Windows client, and can archive either to SharePoint or a network folder option that we offer as well. Now, before we wrap up, I did want to just give you a high-level overview of the newest member of the Zetadocs family. And for those of you that are going to the Innovia customer conference that's going to be taking place in a few weeks, this is something that we will be demonstrating there as well. Our expense management solution is a web-based expense approval offering that reduces the amount of rekeying of information into NAV. The way it works is it allows salespeople, for example, or employees that are incurring expenses to capture expense information either on a mobile device or using a web browser. We do have apps for Android and Apple iOS devices. And it's something that I use regularly, where from my phone, when I incur an expense, I can take a picture of the receipt, key in the information. Now, when I put in the expense type into the system, that's actually pulling or utilizing NAV GL codes. So when I put in, let's say, a client entertainment expense, that's going to map up to the GL code within NAV. But I can key in all this information, and then at the end of a trip, let's say at the end of a week, I've incurred 30 expenses. I can then take those expenses and submit them as an expense report. So I can gather all the information for a particular month or trip, compile that into a single expense report that I'll then send to my manager for approval. Now, throughout the process, the system does have the capability to manage any thresholds, for example. What I mean by that is if you want to put in a maximum amount or a warning level amount for client entertainment expenses that are over, let's say, $500. If there's ever a client entertainment expense more than $500, this system will provide a warning throughout the approval process. And the approvers are automatically going to be assigned when a user submits an expense report. Now, the approvers will receive an email notification. So when I submit my report, it goes to my manager. He receives an email notification from the site, he can view all the information on that expense report. He can view copies of the receipts. Also, the system will notify him if there are any expenses that exceed the warning levels in the system. And once my manager approves the expense, it will then be sent to the finance team. The finance team, you'll have a user that can review the information just as a way to make sure that any GL codes or dimension codes are properly mapped, because when they approve the expense from the expense approval site, the system will then write the information to NAV, creating a purchase invoice. Now, if the expense report has multiple payment types, so let's say some reimbursable expenses that were paid by cash and reimbursement expenses, or I should say non-reimbursable expenses that were done on a credit card, the system will be able to manage that and create two invoices within NAV automatically, one for the reimbursable expenses to the employee and one for the non-reimbursable expenses for the corporate credit card. So it's a great solution. We've had a lot of positive feedback because it truly does eliminate the rekeying of information that may appear on an Excel spreadsheet into NAV. So with that, just wanted to focus on a couple next steps. We recommend that you get Zetadocs Express. As I mentioned, it's available to customers that are running NAV 2009 and newer systems. Work with Innovia on having that installed. And then from there, it's a great tool, as I mentioned, to start utilizing document management to identify areas that you may need to upgrade or advanced offerings to complete the solution. So either reach out to your account manager at Innovia or feel free to contact me, and we can work with you on your requirements, get Express installed, and then put together kind of an action for next steps from there. For those of you that are interested in learning, what the return on investment would be for a document management solution, we have a calculator available on the Equisys website, and it allows you to key in the details that are relevant to your specific organization. So how many invoices that you're sending out or purchase orders that you're sending out on a monthly basis. Also, how many proof of delivery documents or vendor invoices that you're currently storing. You can key in all of that information and it will show you what a sample return on investment that you could see by deploying a document management solution. So just to kind of wrap things up, it's my view that paper has had its day. It's time consuming and costly, we've illustrated today. Paper can be causing issues within an organization in terms of providing the quality of service that an organization provides their vendors and customers, because users don't have access to the critical information they need to respond effectively to questions. They see the information within the NAV system, but they don't have access to the supporting files with a paper-based system. That's something hopefully that you can see by what I've shown today that Zetadocs eliminates. It allows users to access all the information instantly on screen. So there truly is a better way. I want to thank you all for attending today's session. And with that, Abby, were there any questions?
We do have a couple of questions here, Mitch. Our first one, is it possible to archive files against journal entries?
Yes, that is something that a lot of organizations that have deployed Zetadocs don't realize, is that with the solution, you can really attach supporting information anywhere within the system. And one of the common requests we have is for journal and ledger entries. And you can attach files to a journal entry and with some customization, ensure that all of that supporting information flows through to the ledger entry as well.
Okay, great. Our next question, does Zetadocs support the scanning of documents, and what scanners are supported?
Yes, so with Zetadocs, I wanted to focus on the drag and drop feature today. That's typically the most common way we're seeing users use the solution, but we do have a variety of ways to capture files that may arrive in a paper format. You can scan those documents in either to a multi-user queue for filing or to auto-link them using barcodes. With our solution, we do work with any scanner that has a scanned network folder option so that users would be able to scan that file to a central location that they would then be able to access that file from within NAV.
Okay, and we also have another question. Does Zetadocs support NAV in a hosted environment?
Yes, our development team has spent a lot of time over the last 2 years developing and improving the solution so that it will work with NAV no matter how it's deployed. So whether you're running NAV on-premise or in the cloud, if you're using the web client versus the Windows client, with the current offering of Zetadocs, we support all of those formats, and the functionality for the web client is the same as the Windows client. So you don't have any loss in functionality if you go decide to use the web client instead of the traditional Windows client.
Okay, great. That is all of the questions I have right now. I'll just give everyone another second to type in any questions they might have. And while I'm doing that, remind you that we did record this session and we're going to post it onto our website. It'll be there by this afternoon. And of course, the website is innovia.com. And Mitch, that is it for our questions.
All right, thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you, Mitch, and thanks to our attendees. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar and, of course, at our customer conference.